Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 6 of the Oxrageous podcast. We are now 5 weeks into the season, and yes, we are 5-0. And for those of you who didn't listen to me last week that we were going to win, I hope you have learned your lesson. I also hope you are not listening to the Magic 8 Ball, because even the Magic 8 Ball has had no faith in the Gators. 2 weeks ago, it wouldn't even give me an answer. Last week, it said the outlook wasn't so good. It joined the pundits and the experts in saying, Florida doesn't have a chance. Florida can't hang with these guys. They're lucky to be ranked. This is the new Florida Gators, not the old Florida Gators. Ladies and gentlemen, everything has changed. Fan apathy is starting to disappear. The fans are coming out from under their rocks and in their caves and supporting the team again. The swamp is rocking. The SEC is on notice. And yes, even the nation is on notice, as Gators jumped from 25th up to 11th in the rankings. And suddenly we go from underdogs who have no chance to being favorites. And we may end up being favorites for every game the rest of the year except LSU. So the tables have turned in a hurry, and hopefully the players will adjust to that line of thinking. And saying that, I'm going to jump right into your questions because we got a lot to cover today. Okay, first question. And this was asked by Blonde Gator. After the promise game, and of course Saturday's spectacular victory, will the formerly meaningless Ole Miss game become sort of a touchstone game for the Gators in the future? Not a classic rivalry game, but some sort of good luck charm going forward. Well, I'll say that if Florida goes on to do great things under Coach Mack, we'll always be able to point to that game on Saturday as the one that started it all. It really got the attention of the entire country. You know, suddenly all these other teams are looking around going, are the Gators back? Are they a force to be reckoned with again? You know, someone linked a thread on the FSU message boards where suddenly they were getting quite a bit nervous about their game at the end of the year, and they hadn't done that for a few years. And Alabama fans were really complimentary of the Gators, but, you know, they love Coach Mack, and they miss Coach Mack, so... And you never know. We may end up getting a crack at those Bama guys at the end of the year. You know, keep the faith on that one. Next question. Was the Ole Miss game a fluke on offense or a preview of the rest of the season? And that was a question by Ginter UF. Well, I certainly wouldn't say it was a fluke. You know, I think Ole Miss's plan was to come out and be aggressive and try to shake Will Grier up. I mean, he is a freshman, and he'd been playing like a freshman all season, but of course it backfired. You know, the game plan was brilliant, the play calling was brilliant, a lot of short passes, and Will Grier has a fantastic quick release. And teams are going to be forced to respect our pass a lot more, you know, especially with the three receivers we have, who I'm really excited about, maybe more than anyone else on the team, is that trio of receivers. There's nothing like having explosive receivers as weapons. It's been so long, but that, in turn, you would hope would open things up more for the running game, which it's getting better, but it's really still kind of the weak point on the team. And speaking of the running game, next question. Kelvin Taylor has gotten 46 of the last 50 carries by running backs. When will the freshman see meaningful carries again? Bernardo de la Paz asked that question. And I get a question every single week about the running back situation. And, you know, the answer is that whenever the coaching staff feels the other running backs are ready. Scarlett isn't playing at all. The rumors are that he has ball security issues, and the coaches obviously don't feel comfortable letting him carry the ball. And both of them, including Cronkite, I'm sure have issues in pass protection. With the weakness of our offensive line, pass protection is paramount. And the inexperienced running backs, both in college and the pros, always have a problem knowing who to pass block. We can't afford to have our running backs whiffing blocks back there and getting our young quarterback killed. So, like it or not, I think Kelvin Taylor is probably going to dominate carries all year. All right, next question. Did Demarcus Robinson become motivated after Antonio Callaway's performances against Tennessee to do better, and did it show against Ole Miss? That was a question by the Big Claw. And just like the running backs, here's our weekly Demarcus Robinson question. Did you hear Coach Mack's comments about Robinson in the post-game press conference? Because they always ask him about Robinson, and he made some kind of crack about how he doesn't understand why Robinson is still dancing around back there, and he didn't get it, and he still seemed pretty unhappy with Robinson. He obviously has a lot to prove still to the coaching staff. Every single game, though, it seems like he does something with the ball in his hands, and you go, wow, this guy may be the most talented guy on the whole team. And, if he could put it all together, he could be one of the best receivers in the nation. I think the coaching staff knows it, which is probably why they're frustrated with him. It's the little things, I'm sure, that he's not picking up. But as far as Callaway motivating him, it's hard to say. It may have. No veteran likes to see a little freshman come in and upstage them. So, like I said before, I'm just thrilled to have 3 playmakers at the wide receiver position again. It's been way too long for stuff like that. Okay, next question. And this is a long one. While we could all not be happier with the start of the season, Gator fans always want more. Let's face it, since Steve Spurrier showed up, our goal is SEC championships and beyond. As fans, how do we keep a realistic sense of high expectations? We don't want a year in taking a big step back to glory to become a disappointment due to expectations that may not be realistic. As a longtime Gator, I have to slap myself because I'm already thinking about an unbeaten season, another SEC title, and a national title. The swamp is alive again. In the words of Dorothy and the Munchkins, ding dong, Muschamps gone. Gator Charm gave us that one. That was a mouthful. Well, I think right now expectations of an SEC title or a national title, I'd have to admit, are probably pretty unrealistic. Nothing's impossible, I guess, especially with the weak field across the board this year. Look at the top 10 every week, and they're struggling against supposedly inferior competition. But, Florida's still relying on so many underclassmen. It would take a miracle to go that far. Saying that, a great quarterback can take teams much farther than they have any business going. Will Greer's a freshman, but Johnny Manziel won the Heisman as a redshirt freshman. And while Greer isn't winning the Heisman, he could easily lead us to winning some games that we aren't supposed to win. He's already done it. So, look across the entire nation, look across the SEC at the mediocre quarterback play. It seems like good quarterbacks are getting rarer and rarer and rarer, and those who have them have a huge advantage over everyone else. Look at teams like FSU. They lose Winston, you lose an elite quarterback, suddenly you're an average team again. We know what happened when we lost Tebow. We didn't think there'd be a decline that much. But, it's a quarterback's game, and having an elite one can practically single-handedly win championships, like Cam Newton did, for example, in his 1 year with Auburn. So, let's just sit back and enjoy the ride and see what our new quarterback can do for us. But as far as expectations, I've always been one that thought, as Gator fans, we should have high expectations. Why else are we fans? We're the University of Florida. We're not Southeast Missouri State. Our expectations should always be high. All right, next question. Do you think the team actually had the flu last week? I don't. Gator JB threw that one at us. This is actually an interesting conspiracy theory. Maybe a ruse to perhaps let them get their guard down. Let their guard down a little. I doubt it. Although it wouldn't surprise me if the tales of their suffering weren't a little bit exaggerated. I think Ole Miss just showed up thinking that they could win the game. I think they thought they could show up and win. They underestimated the crowd noise, and I think they certainly underestimated the Gators. So, but that carries a different challenge. Or teams aren't going to be underestimating us anymore. That leads me to my next question. How do you see this team handling the success they've had thus far in the season? Question by Tennessee Gator. That's where the coaches come in. Coach Mack has completely downplayed the success we've had so far to the media. This is kind of his thing. No highs, no lows with Coach Mack. I don't know if he does does that with the team, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think the coaching staff is very aware that they can't allow overconfidence. They want confidence, not overconfidence. We've enjoyed a nice little stretch here last couple of games, but they have been home games, which is, a huge advantage. Now we're heading on a very tough road stretch. It's a whole different ball of wax. I have a lot of faith in this coaching staff. I love this coaching staff, and they seem to get better every game. And I think they're doing a great job keeping the players grounded. And also, I think one thing that's big that we have this year that we haven't had the last few years, we didn't have much of it in the whole Muschamp era, was team leaders to step up and help the coaches, lead these guys, keep them in line, bring them up, bring them down. Antonio Morrison is a perfect example of someone who's been a team leader and has really inspired the players around him. You've got to have that if you're going to make a big splash on a year. All right, on to some Missouri questions. I still have a hard time, even after a few years now, it's still difficult. It hasn't really set in that Missouri's an SEC team. Does Missouri seem like an SEC team to you? They still don't to me. I think Texas A&M fit pretty well in the SEC, but Missouri, I don't know where Missouri is located and their weird, hideous uniforms, and the fact that we've lost this team the last 2 years, it doesn't sit well. Let's get to these questions. What does Mac have to do to prevent this young team from having a letdown game against Missouri? That was Gator Mac 21-12. And this is along the same lines of what I just discussed, and it's the biggest concern for all the fans this week. This is what we've heard over and over again. Missouri isn't playing the kind of football that's scaring anybody, but it's a road game. We've just come off two extremely emotional games. Probably couldn't have been more emotional. And it's a classic letdown game. But this is an extremely important game. It's a divisional game. It's a must-win game. The coaches just have to keep these players focused. Have you seen the players in interviews? Have you watched Will Greer in his post-game interviews? You can tell they're obviously well coached. No individual accolades. Everything is reflected back on the team. They're almost robots, which is exactly what the coaches want. The coaches want the players to be robots, the media, and I think it's working well. I have a lot of faith in this staff in getting the players ready to be where they should be before the game. Next question. How would you stack up Mizzou's front seven defensively to what we've seen so far? And how will it affect us offensively? And that's another question by Tennessee Gator. Well, let's take a look at the stats and the rankings, which is something I've been liking to look at every week. Surprisingly, Missouri is ranked 8th in the country in total defense. I don't know how many people really knew that. That breaks down to 13th against the pass and 20th against the run. Saying that, their opponents so far have been Southeast Missouri State, Arkansas State, UConn, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Really all teams with lousy offenses. They haven't played a team with anywhere close to the weapons Florida is bringing to town. Right now, Florida's ranked 75th on offense, which is awful, but it's a bit misleading. For example, last week, Florida totally let off the gas in that second half when they had their huge lead. I think Greer threw for less than 50 yards after halftime. Just let the defense take over. But can you believe the Gators are averaging 253 passing yards a game? When is the last time we saw this? That's a beautiful figure. That puts Florida at 42nd in the nation in passing. Unfortunately, to go along with 102nd in rushing. And that the rushing game is the one weakness that the Gators really need to work on. But it's going to be interesting to check those rankings at the end of the season, because I guarantee you we're going to be a hell of a lot higher than 75th at the end of the season. We're just now getting our footing. As far as Missouri's front seven, I don't think they're anywhere near as talented as the front seven we just faced in Ole Miss. I think Missouri, maybe a little bit more wisely than Ole Miss, is going to respect the pass more, which I do think is going to open up the running game a lot more. I think we're going to run. I think we're going to run a lot better this Saturday. I think we're going to rush for over 200 yards without much of a problem. I see a big day for Kelvin Taylor, and I see maybe even Scarlett getting some carries this week, especially when we pull out to that big lead in the second half. Offensively, Missouri's offense is ranked 120th out of 128 teams in the country. That sounds like us last few years. That breaks down to 85th passing and 113th rushing. And they've got a true freshman going against our vicious line in his second ever start. So here you have a team that can't run the ball, really can't pass the ball, and now they're bringing in a true freshman in his second start to face the Gators. If we play even half as well on defense as we played last week, it's going to be an extremely long day for Missouri. It's difficult for me to see them being able to move the ball at all and definitely not score points. They're completely overmatched, and while this freshman, I guess he's got a pretty good reputation. I guess he's pretty talented. He's still a true freshman going against our secondary. They are going to eat him alive. The over-under on interceptions is 4. For the Gators, we're ranked 22nd overall in total defense, which breaks down to 54th against the pass and 15th against the run. Florida's averaging giving up less than 100 yards rushing a game. Simply put, Missouri is in serious trouble on offense. Next question. Mizzou thoroughly embarrassed us in the swamp last year. Will the players be looking for revenge, or is last year completely erased from their memories? That's another question from Bernardo de la Paz. I don't think it's been completely erased. We definitely have a lot of players this year that were on that team last year. They had to go through that, which may have been the worst loss in the history of the school. Whatever supporters Will Muschamp had at that point evaporated and faded away after that one. However, I just think we're a superior team this year. I don't really think we need the extra motivation, but it certainly can't hurt. All right, let's move on to asking the Magic 8 Ball. Magic 8 Ball hasn't really been real supportive so far. Let's see if the Magic 8 Ball has come as far as we have as fans. Will the Florida Gators beat Missouri this week? Without a doubt. All right, now we're talking. Now we are talking without a doubt. Thank you, Magic 8 Ball. You are now on board. Wow, that's exciting to see, without a doubt. Fantastic. All right, next question. Mac has been masterful in his handling of the media so far this season. Will he handle the media as well when we inevitably lose a game? And another question by Bernardo. I think Mac already had his emotional meltdown against East Carolina, and you're really not going to see that kind of a wild mood swing the rest of the season. He's downplaying all the wins right now. He's downplaying everything. So I'd figure he'd probably use the same kind of strategy with losses. He's not going to be 2 up or 2 down. He kind of has this stay the course attitude. And, in his defense, I got to say, we have a pretty mediocre group of sports reporters. I mean, you hear the kind of questions the poor guy has to answer after these games. He can barely hide his disdain a lot of the times. But I think his handling of the media is one of his strong points. Because I think Mac tends to talk more like a real person and use a little less coach speak than a lot of the other coaches. So I think he's going to continue to handle the media well. And as I already said, I don't think he's going to treat the media much different after a loss than a win, because right now he's completely downplaying our success, which is what he thinks he has to do. Question: Will we have a meltdown when we lose a game this year, MGM Gator? And the answer to that is without question, we will. No matter how much success we've had so far, because we're fans. And that's what we do, and we wouldn't have it any other way, And that's what message boards like Gator Chatter are for, getting those feelings off your chest, because misery loves company. And I think message boards, sports message boards in particular, have actually prevented a lot of crimes in the past, because people have a place to go to vent their frustrations instead of taking it out on property or, God forbid, other people. So I think message boards deserve a lot of credit for that. But will we melt down? Absolutely. And it makes you feel better. Everyone likes to go to a message board after a loss because it's entertaining, if nothing else. All right, final question. I have worn my GatorChatter.com shirt for 3 games, and we have obviously won all 3. Do you think it's the shirt winning the games or the coach getting his team ready to play? Because I think it's the shirt. And Plays with Trucks asked that question. I completely agree it's the shirt. I was supposed to have a shirt. In fact, I'm going to leave and get a shirt. For those who haven't seen, I got a lot more of these great pirate-themed GatorChatter.com shirts if anyone wants them. $15 shipped. And these are supposed to symbolize, our pillaging and plundering of other Gator message boards. So anybody wants one, let me know. But to answer the question, it is the shirt. Get the shirts, we'll win more games. Okay. I think I've talked enough. I'm sure you agree. As usual, if you want to follow this podcast, go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube. Or if you just want to listen to the audio version, download the free app Stitcher, and it'll be delivered to your mobile device so you can listen to the show on the road. We are off and running, Gator fans. I hope we are now all out from under our blankets, pulling for the Gators and believing, like the players, that we can actually win these games. Everyone worried about this tough stretch in October. Will we be 0-4, 1-3, maybe even 2-2? What do you think about 4-0? One game at a time. Everybody enjoy it. Enjoy your week, and go Gators.